Welcome back. You're still tuned in to News and Views with myself, Salaylo Makwidiri. We're going to be giving an update to, I think, a story that we've been following quite closely. If you were listening to the show yesterday, we spoke about the MV Ultramarine, a vessel ship, I think, of Indian origin that has, intercepted, docked right now in the Durban harbor, where essentially it has been anchored there under very, very tense scrutiny by civil society and pro-Palestinian organization activists from the Durban area. They have sounded the alarm, alleging that the vessel may be carrying military cargo from India bound to Israel. This comes amid heightened global outrage over Israel's ongoing assault on Gaza, with over 2 million Palestinians caught in what has been called the first live stream genocide of the modern era. We are all seeing it unfold right before our eyes. South Africa has taken a firm stance at the ICJ, accusing Israel of genocide, and co-leads the Hague Group of States, which has called for a complete arms embargo on Tel Aviv. However, here at home, activists are asking, why is a vessel suspected of carrying weapons to Israel being allowed to anchor in our waters? Where is the government's response? The only reply received so far from the South African Police Services, more than a day after that inspection, is the vessel is at outer anchorage. They are dealing with it at the highest level with port authorities, and basically, thank you. That's about it. But for many campaigners, this is not enough. And I will be getting an update on the next steps from here onwards. And joining me for that is Deborah Ewing. She's a long-time activist and member of the KZN Palestine Solidarity Forum, who has been monitoring this story quite closely. Deborah, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Salam Media. Really appreciate you giving us your time this morning. All right. We seem to have lost Deborah there for a moment. We're going to try and get her back, because I think this is a very, very important story to kind of unpack, especially looking at South Africa's standing and basically us going to the ICJ, standing in front of the world and telling them there's a plausible evidence of a genocide in Gaza perpetuated by Israel in itself, and something needs to be done. But there's a different picture that is being drawn by our government. There's still trade that is happening with Israel. There's still docking of Israeli-bound ships on our harbors. And I think it's time for action, the time for talking, the time for these negotiations and all kinds of meetings. It has come to an end, and I think it starts right here. It starts with South Africa and making those very, very important lived reality changes to the way we do business, to the way that we do with Israel as a state. Deborah, we lost you there for a moment. Good morning. Really appreciate you giving us your time.
Good morning, Salaylo. Thanks for having me. Hi to the listeners, the audience.
I think we can get into the conversation with maybe just you giving us the latest when it comes to the current status of the MV Ultramarine. Has there been any movement since yesterday's response from the South African Police Services? Is that vessel still docked with its crew and whatever it had on board?
Okay, so we're tracking the vessel, and just as I came on the call, it was on the move. So it had been at outer anchorage off Mgloti since it arrived in South African waters on the 29th. This morning, it started to move towards the harbour, and as I came on the call, it was off Mhlanga.
And when it comes to South African authorities, the police, the government, in essence, their interaction with them, what are they saying? What's the next step from here onwards?
Okay, so when we laid the report at Maiden Wharf, the SAPs assured us that any vessel suspected of carrying illegal goods or of carrying cargo that was likely to be used to commit human rights violations would not be allowed to dock at any South African port. The next update was that SAPs were boarding the vessel, which we understood they did yesterday. And we haven't had a report back on what they found. The position of the South African Palestine movement is that if any vessel that is bound for Israel during this genocide should not be allowed to stop, dock, refuel, offload or unload at South African ports.
Mm, mm. You are among the activists that are monitoring this ship. Maybe for our listeners that are only getting hold of the story right now, what are the suspicions and how credible is the information that it's carrying arms destined for Israel?
Okay, so we received a report that there was this vessel and the details of the vessel was supplied, and it was stated that it was carrying 15 crates of explosives. No more detail was given than that. So on the basis of that report and that suspicion, we alerted the authorities, SAPS and Transnet.
And that's a very, very important point to mention. But just broadly, South Africa has presented itself as a champion of Palestinian rights. We all know of that well-documented ICJ case. In your view, what obligation does that place on our government when it comes to incidences like this one?
So, in my view, it should be the South African government that is leading the effort to make sure that nothing gets through to Israel that is enabling this genocide. So, if we are saying that at the ICJ that Israel is committing a genocide, then we all have a legal obligation to make sure that nothing is done that makes us complicit in that. So, no diplomatic ties, no trade, no allowing of equipment to get through to Israel that can be used against the Palestinian population. And yeah, stopping of all trade. It shouldn't be up to civil society to do that.
And I think that's the concerning part, because at the end of the day, the buck does stop with the government. One thing that I think is very, very important to note also is the fact that you guys have called for full disclosure of the cargo manifest. Is there any legal avenue available to force transparency in this case, or are we relying solely on public pressure without government having to do much except the pressure that activists and organizations like yourselves who are pro-Palestine are putting on them?
Okay, so we're consulting with lawyers. Public pressure is important. South African courts can seize vessels that are found to be or suspected to be carrying goods that could be used in to commit human rights violations. So we need to be pushing all avenues because every day that goes past, every hour that goes past, Palestinians are being starved and killed.
Mm, mm. And I want to note, I think, a very similar incident. I think it was in Namibia back in 2024, where this case the Namibian case is essentially being cited as a model. What kind of lessons can South Africa draw from what the people in Windhoek in Namibia did in 2024, when they didn't allow the MV Catherine to dock? Are there lessons? Has there been any kind of communications with activists in Namibia to kind of draw from their experiences?
Yes, I think there are several examples, and the lessons are that we need, solidarity, joint action across civil society of all faith groups, the trade unions, legal organizations, liaising closely with the authorities, because we're talking about enforcing laws. We're not talking about advocacy and political pressure. We're talking about enforcing legal obligations to prevent and stop human rights violations. So it does require all of us, the police and the port authorities, to do their job, government to direct it, and civil society just keep the pressure on and organize together and let the government know that the public are behind them in carrying through the commitment to support an end to this genocide and the rights of Palestinian people.
And finally, before I let you go, what are your next steps if the government does not act? Will this become almost like a broader mobilizing issue across ports and cities across South Africa's shores?
It definitely needs to become that, because this is just one example that we were alerted to by somebody outside. So without that report, we wouldn't have known about this vessel. We need to be monitoring much more closely to ensure that a blockade is properly imposed.
I think we're going to leave it on that note. This is a story that we'll definitely be following quite closely. Deborah, I really appreciate you giving us your time.
Thank you very much.
There you have it. And as the MV Ultramarine remains anchored off Durban's coast, and official responses from SAPS remain quite vague. I think pressure is mounting now on South African authorities to act decisively on this and to be more transparent. For activists and concerned citizens, I think this is not just about one vessel, to be honest. It's about whether South Africa will hold its legal and moral obligations in the face of what many are calling a test of its stance against genocide. Can our government walk the talk? We'll be tracking this development quite closely. I think it's a very, very important time for South Africa to make a statement. The ICJ was one part, but dealing with the literal bilateral relation cutting of those with Israel, it's one that we still need to see in full swing and in full effect from our government. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, News and Views continues.